Mythos Busters, investigating the mystery, monsters, and madness of Arkham Horror, the card game.
Hello and welcome to episode 18 of Mythos Busters, where, oh my god, it's just so goddamn early right now. I'm Sean, and joining me today on this early Saturday morning, I had forgotten that 8 o'clock a.m. on Saturday morning even existed, because my kid is almost 10. She'd survive at least 72 hours if I just died in my sleep. It's wonderful.
That's morbid.
But being a parent, you know it's not a weird thought.
Fair.
You have a constant awareness of how long your kid would make it if you kicked it. So we've got Scott. Hi, Scott.
Morning.
And Ian.
Hello.
And Nick.
Hello!
And today, on this early morning, I'm going to be sipping my elixir of life, my coffee, and we're going to be talking about Arkham Horror, the card game. So we've got our standard intros, which are actually going to be pretty quick today, and we're going to move pretty much straight into our main topic, which is going to be our discussion of Blood on the Altar and Undimensioned and Unseen, or as Nick likes to call it, you... you, saving all of like 2 syllables.
I like to shorten things, yeah. It's easier.
And then after that, of course, we'll move into our normal tentacle time. And guys, I'm super excited. We have our first Mythos Busters hotline message that we're going to talk about. So, spoiler discussion at the very end of the podcast. We're going to talk a little bit, just a little bit, and we're going to try to keep it civil, about where doom awaits. So it's not going to be our full discussion like we're doing for the other 2 today, but the voicemail we got was a fun piece that I think you guys are going to enjoy the discussion, assuming you've seen and played Where Doom Awaits. So let's get it rolling. Nick, what we got?
Well, our community section is truncated in the efforts to keep the show under a certain time frame, since it's early morning and I do have to work I have to go to work in a couple hours, and we have that spoiler discussion later. So really, for community, I just wanted to say special thanks to Travis from Salt Lake City for calling in our first voicemail and prompting that discussion that we will be having post Tentacle Time.
Yeah.
But other than that, no community highlights this episode.
Perfect. Ian, what do we got for news?
So our big news since last time is basically the announcement of the first Mythos pack in... I forgot what the cycle is called now. Is it just
Path
the Carcosa cycle? Path to Carcosa cycle. And this one is called Echoes of the Past. So as usual, they don't give us too much about the story, which is a good thing in my opinion. Mm-hmm. Just that we're continuing to investigate the King in Yellow and all his... yellowy escapades. As far as player cards, we did get a couple things spoiled. There's going to be 2 new traits, talent and composure. Well, the talents aren't new, but the composure is kind of the type of talent, which is going to be based on the amount of horror you have. And the first one we have is called Plucky. So, Scott, I'll go ahead, if you have it in front of you, I'll let you read that one since it's a survivor.
And then you can explain to us what the word means.
So, Plucky is a 1-cost asset. It's 1 XP. It's got a willpower and a intellect pip. Has the traits talent and composure. And it has the keyword fast and also limit 1 composure in play. Non-direct horror must be assigned to Plucky before it can be assigned to your investigator card. And it has 0 health and 1 sanity. And then it has the fast action, spend 1 resource, you get +1 willpower for the skill test. Or another fast action, spend 1 resource, you get +1 intellect for this test.
Scott, as our survivor player, how do you feel about this?
Scott as the guy who doesn't play talents. I mean, I think it's better than the talents we had in the core set.
Sure.
This wouldn't be actually too bad in Agnes, I think.
No,
I mean-
better than Arcane Studies, I think, because that's the closest comparison, right? Because that's the two stats that it boosts for the same cost, so it's just a matter of what the difference.
Yeah.
But the problem
play
is that
This is-
Agnes focuses on taking horror, so this is going to be out a max of what, 1 turn?
Oh, yeah.
probably.
So this is horrible in Agnes.
Yeah. That's the thing that gets me. It's like I like the stats that it boosts for Survivor, but the fact that I can understand the first non-direct horror has to be played on it, but then it only has 1 sanity, so it's kind of it's very
Before it can be assigned to your investigator. So, like, what I like about this in
You put it on
Survivor
ally.
is you can put it on Pete.
That's okay. You know, I didn't even think about that. That's very true.
Yeah,
I was just thinking it as
so
the
you-
first one.
And by Pete, of course, I mean Peter, because that matters.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I think I like it better than the core set ones. I don't know if I'll play it, but it's good. Like it's a 6 out of 10 on the Scott scale.
I think, like with anything, these get better the stronger resource engine you have, and I just don't think that's Survivor's forte.
Right.
In fact, I would say that is anathema to Survivor's forte. But it's a cool card. I like the design.
I love the
It's
art.
sweet. Like you've collected your shit, and you're like, yeah, I'm gonna be determined in the face of difficulty, which is what Plucky means.
Yeah, I like that it's fast, which is one of the things we talked about with the original talent assets. That helps a lot. And the other good thing for Survivor is this is like the perfect complement to Scrapper, which is boosting combat and agility. So this is kind of the other side of that, as long as until you take horror and it goes away, but that's fine. So our other card is kind of, if composure is like the side where you haven't been mentally traumatized yet and haven't taken horror, then desperation is the other kind of new card that is going to focus on giving you boosts when you have taken a crap load of horror and you're nearing insanity. So this one is Run for Your Life. Sean, did you want to read this one?
Sure. So Run for Your Life is a neutral skill, level 0. It has 4, count 'em, 4 agility pips. Desperate trait, max 1 committed per skill test, and commit to a skill test only if you have 3 or fewer remaining sanity. I'd also like to point out that they correctly stanist this card and use the word fewer as opposed to less, which I find that is a common mistake with card text language. So, I don't know about this one specifically, but if we assume the theme is if you have X horror or however many damage or sanity remaining, these are good Agnes cards.
Yeah.
It's really good with Roland.
Yes, very much so.
Right, Nick?
Doesn't take long to get down to 3.
And then it's turned on. Yeah.
You're almost
Yes.
there anyway.
So if we assume that we're going to be getting 1 for each stat, then
Yeah.
I mean, that, like, for real, anyone who's going to be at 5 or maybe even 6 sanity, yeah, you can get down to 3 pretty quickly, especially if you're building for this and you're just like, yep, first 2 go on my investigator every time, no question about it. Then I'll worry about allies and other equipment to take horror later. Seems pretty solid.
Yeah, I think it depends on investigator. Like some investigators, I probably wouldn't like it because it could easily be kind of just a dead card in
Daisy.
your hand for a while, which would be annoying. So, yeah, it depends.
If they come out with a combat one, which I'm sure they will, that has the same requisite, then I'm putting 2 of in my Roland deck every single time. Probably put 2 of all of these in my Roland deck every single time.
You got to get that max value out of shotgun.
I normally don't enjoy cards that are kind of like they're planning for you. Like, I guess in competitive card games, like if I'm doing poorly, this card will get me out of a bind.
Our Survivor player, everyone.
I don't like playing from behind.
I'm not a Survivor player. I'm a Lucky player.
The
look what I
lucky
found.
class.
Yeah. But this, I really like this one because 3 or fewer sanity, like it's not that bad, and it is a really good get out of jail card. Like 4 agility. I mean, that's insane. That brings everyone's agility to like. If you're playing in standard, I mean, you commit this and you're like, okay, I guess I'll reach in the bag because I'm pretty much guaranteed to pass. Like it's, yeah.
Yeah.
This is an okay get out of jail card.
In that kind of situation, I could see doing something where you're like 1 away from getting that 3 or fewer. So you just do something to take the opportunity attack, hopefully it's just like 1 hit to your sanity, it gets you in range, and then you evade the thing, and then you run away. Something like that, I could see.
Mm-hmm. I like this design.
I like the giant Hubert in the back who's about to suck up the
That's
investigators.
what that is.
The giant Cubert. The most famous of all the great old ones, Cubert.
That's obviously Moby Dick.
Moby Dank.
Yeah.
So if we didn't make it already clear, these are supposedly one each of a few different cards with the composure trait and with the desperate trait. And I think, from what I remember, that these are going to be concentrated in this particular pack. So we'll see what goes on there. The other thing to mention is for the scenario itself, the one detail we have is this is going to be in the Historical Society in Arkham. So we got the museum, and now in our city tour, we're going to the Historical Society.
The less popular museum.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So I think that's about it for the news.
Their membership fees are lower, so it's okay. All right, awesome. Well, the other thing I want to point out, and I don't know if I got that sense from this article, but one thing that my experience in following closely the Lord of the Rings game has taught me is that quite often when they spoil the first pack of a cycle, they'll actually throw in cards that are just kind of in the cycle as a whole and not necessarily in that first pack, because, you know, they just want to tease the cycle as a whole. So don't be surprised if some of these cards we're seeing are not actually in Echoes of the Past. But I could be wrong.
Also, announcing this pack proves the game's not dead. So
There is that.
there is that. Posts.
Ivan from Pat, announcements of sets does not, it's not dead. You can announce it all you want. Once I got it in my hands, that's different.
Nick, you are going to spur so many forum posts with that comment. Nick,
I'm speaking more about Lord of the Rings than Arkham.
No, I was thinking of Conquest.
Are they still announcing stuff for Conquest?
No.
Oh,
The wound is still
that'd be
raw.
hilarious.
Yeah.
All right, guys, so let's move it on into our discussion topic, that high and tight discussion of Mythos packs past. So, talking about, I guess, if we feel like going in order would probably be the thing to do. Talking about Blood on the Altar, which I feel is probably like the mid-season finale. I really liked this scenario. To talking quickly about the player cards, guys, any highlights among the player cards that you'd like to point out? Ian?
Yeah. A little card I like to call Lone Wolf for Rogue.
Yes.
As a reminder, this is the one that it's an asset, and when your turn begins, if there are no other investigators at your location, gain 1 resource. So as someone who plays a lot of solo, that's basically a card that says gain 1 resource at the beginning of each of your turns.
Why would you not have it in your solo?
Yeah, and even in multiplayer, it kind of depends on your playstyle and the other investigators, but that it gets interesting then, because sometimes it pushes you to like, no, I don't want to go to where the rest of you guys are. I'm just going to stay here because I want my resource.
Yeah, it also really makes turn order matter a lot more, because I've played it in two-handed before, and it's like, okay, well, now the other investigator always goes first and just gets the hell out of this. Location.
Yeah, it's like everyone else GTFO. I need my resource.
Exactly.
Yeah, we actually had it in our Jenny deck during our 4-player game, and I was expecting, okay results from it, but it actually still Like, because the Jenny player ended up going last most of the time, unless he absolutely had to go first, it still worked out a lot, even though it was a 4-player game. So, great card.
Yeah, ridiculously good card. Nick, how about you? Oh, Scott, go ahead.
Oh, Nick, no. Nick, please.
Scott, you had to get it out there, man.
I was going to say higher education, just because of what it's done to Daisy.
Yeah.
She finally got her degree, and now she's useful.
She's so good. Or so much better, I should say. She's so much better.
And I mean, the +2 intellect, whatever, it's the willpower boosting that, like, you know, she can actually use her splash category now, like, with all the mystic cards.
Yep.
That
and what's nice
is
Seeker specifically has one of the better resource engines in the game in Dr. Milan. So not only are you getting a higher value for each resource in a +2 to willpower, but you know, as a Seeker, assuming you get Milan out, you're just gonna have more resources. So,
but only if you're investigating, right?
Well, you know, something Seekers might do from time to time.
If a Seeker happens to investigate, yeah, like it, and keeping.
I don't know. You're gonna have to build for it.
Yeah, with preposterous sketches, and lab assistant, like keeping 5 cards in your hand to keep higher education turned on. That's
and
so
old book
easy.
galore.
Yeah.
Like with Daisy, that's just like she just draws an extra card every turn. That's essentially what that is.
And also action draw a card. I mean, you'll be fine.
If you have to, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Nick, what's sticking out for you?
I love the shotgun leash, prepared for the worst. Just like, I need to get that shotgun out, let me just yank on that leash, dig 10 cards down, and see if I can find it. I do like Keen Eye, but my problem with Keen Eye is that my Guardian decks tend to run light on resources, so I can't power up with Keen Eye as often as I want to. So I ended up picking Prepared for the Worst as my favorite out of those two.
Keen Eye is expensive.
Yeah, Zoe definitely likes it more than Roland for sure.
Yes,
and I feel like it's gotten better. Like once that deck can afford 2 I've had worses, because I think that's really Guardian's only card-based resource engine, right? Outside
other
of
than
Zoe's
Stand
ability.
Together.
Oh, Stand Together, yeah. More XP.
But I play solo, so F me, I guess.
Yeah.
Standalone.
Standalone, yeah.
Like
I do like Prepared for the Worst a lot for... I haven't found room for it in Jenny yet, but I do like the idea of using it to grab her 45s early if you are building a deck that's really dependent on that. That helps a lot.
I was a little demystified with Prepared for the Worst, because the first time I used it was in that 4-player game, and I drew my opening hand, no shotgun. So I ditched what I needed to and drew again, no shotgun, but I had Prepared for the Worst. Then I played that first turn, no shotgun. And I was like, what the... It was literally the last card in my deck was my shotgun. So, but since then, I've come around on it. It's actually pulled through for me more than once.
So your leash was empty. There was nothing on the end of it.
Yeah, I was just dragging around a leash with me. I totally forgot that I left the shotgun at home.
I do like the mental image of Roland walking around Arkham just with the shotgun on the end of the leash.
Yeah, so for my part, the Mystic cards in this one did not tickle me overly. Now I think there's a place for Blood Pact since we have Moonlight Ritual. But, man, +3 to a single test is good, but a Doom for +3 to a single test is not, I don't know.
Not a fan?
By itself, even I quail from that expenditure. It's basically, unless you're in the witching hour and you can sling Doom willy-nilly without recourse, then I don't know that that's something you use very often.
Sure.
Willy-nilly.
But one thing I did really like is Rise to the Occasion. So I think for both Agnes and for Ashcan Pete, for those off stat tests that you might have to do, So obviously they replace with Duke and spells their kind of lower stats, but occasionally the game will make you test something a little bit a little bit less advantageous for you. And I like throwing in a one of Rise to the Occasion just for those occasions.
To rise to.
And, yes, to which to rise. And then of course, sorry, go ahead, Scott.
I was gonna say I like one of two as well. That's
It's not something you're going to need every game, but there's usually at least one opportunity to chuck it. And in multiplayer, it's only... Oh, wait, hang on. Rise to the Occasion, can you play on a... You can only play to a test you're performing.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, I mean, we got to mention it. It's super unsexy compared to everything else, but it's also really good, is upgraded quiche, level 2 quiche.
Unsexy? I mean, draw a card, man. That's sexy.
Yeah. It's functional.
Mm-hmm.
It's not anything I'm writing home about.
This Mythos pack should come with 8 copies of that. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I really
sucks.
wish. Okay, guys, so we're going to play a new game that we're going to do from now on when we look at Mythos packs. So the game is which investigator made out best from this pack? And since I'm springing this on you guys, I'll
Investigator
go
or class?
Okay. Investigator
Okay.
specifically.
Oh, there's one clear winner, I think.
So I'm between two, but since I think you guys are going to pick the other one, I'm going to go Daisy.
That's who I was going to say.
That's what I was going to say.
Okay, well, I know who Ian's probably going to say.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Scott, you covered it, pretty much to a T. The preposterous sketches for draw, the higher education. Basically, the draw higher education spell build is really fun and at least in the middle of the pack power-wise. And compared to where she was before she had access to those cards, it made it complete turnaround for her deck.
I mean, the fact that people are throwing around a deck name or a deck archetype called Higher Education Daisy, like the card itself has created a new deck type.
It sure has.
And it brought her from what I would consider like last place to, like you said, right middle of the pack, right? Like a decent investigator.
She's flexible.
Who could possibly do really well solo as well.
That's my favorite campaign I have running right now. It's weird.
Yeah.
It definitely would have told you it was Agnes, but this latest scenario kind of ruined it for me. But we'll get there. We'll get there.
Spoilers.
Okay, Ian.
Yeah, I was chomping at the bit here. Definitely Jenny for me. We talked about Lone Wolf already, which just makes her get even more resources. But I also could have spotlighted Streetwise, which is a permanent talent, which you can spend 2 to either get a +3 bonus to intellect or agility. And obviously Jenny has the resources, and Streetwise, I would say, along with higher education, is the best of these permanent talents. You're boosting agility, which is usually good for rogues, but that +3 book is what really helps, because rogues generally don't have a lot of help in clue gathering. So,
and having it on the board from turn 1 just helps her pace so much.
Like from this point onward in the campaign, like I upgraded to Streetwise right away in Jenny in this pack. Like it's been MVP card every single scenario Streetwise has. So it's
so good.
Yeah. So Jenny made out really, really well in this pack.
Well, and it's funny how just the change in class can make that go from... Because Guardian has basically the same thing with Keen Eye, but because Guardian has almost no resource acceleration, whereas you take the same exact thing, put it in Rogue, and it's like a staple, and it's like, put it in every Rogue deck. Whereas with Keen Eye, you're like, can I afford this? Is it worth it? Oh, I'm jealous.
I think it's worth mentioning too. Keen Eye is the only one where you get the +1.
That's true too.
So you spend 2 resources to get +1 combat, and then you can use that combat 3 times, which is it's there to be said. But I kind of agree that Streetwise is really good. It helped us in this most latest adventure. So
yeah.
Yeah, and getting that +3, +3 is huge. That takes you and Jenny from 3 intellect to 6 intellect.
Yeah, in some difficulties, why even commit a card if you do that? Just do that and you're done.
Mm-hmm.
6 is a good place to be.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So moving on into the scenario itself. Yeah, so one thing that I initially got wrong about this, my initial play was one of my biggest misplays I've ever had. Read those instructions, guys. You actually remove one of the scenarios, or one of the scenario locations from the game entirely. And I think one of the other big things for setup is I found, since this one has kind of a complex location setup, I found it was really important to very deliberately place them so I could kind of keep track of what was where and what connected to what. I mean, I do that with most scenarios, but more so in this one than any other one.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and to be fair, this one had like an entire brochure that you had to go through for setup, whereas the rest of them just had half a page. So
This one was a very extensive setup.
I got excited.
Document.
This one connected a lot of threads.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of things that are in your campaign log. You're like, when does this ever come up? And yeah.
And then, of course, there's that. One of those threads was that fun variable of whether or not you toss in the old O'Banion gang, who I only have one campaign running right now where I did not cause the O'Banion gang to have a bone to pick with me.
Yeah.
And I actually like that encounter set. As long as you're okay with enemies, that encounter set's not terrible.
Right.
So I actually kind of found it a little bit of a relief to throw that one in the deck, because most of the cards in there are actually pretty better than a lot of the ones you can pull from the other sets.
Well, and not only that, but it saturates the deck. It makes it less likely that you're going to pull the worst stuff like Kidnapped and all that. So
any card that's not Kidnapped, Night Gaunt, or Whippoorwill, I'm just kind of okay with.
There was one in my Windy playthrough. I have 0 campaigns with the O'Banion gang liking me, so they're always in there. And this was one particular scenario where every freaking card was one of the O'Banion gang. But fortunately, Windy's at the point now where she can kind of handle it. She axe murdered a few and ran away from the rest, so it wasn't too bad.
All right. So setting it up properly is definitely important, because especially having one too many locations, and also that means one too many face down encounter cards, kind of makes a difference. Although the campaign I did that for was my solo Duke campaign, and he actually made it to the end even with my my massive fuck up.
Boy.
So,
Fake hard mode.
all right, so yeah, what do you guys feel about this one? As far as just general impressions, I'm very positive on it personally.
Yeah, I agree. It was really interesting design. I love that a lot of the locations were one way. It's meant to feel like you're getting lost in this town that you don't know. So you walk in the general store, you go out the back door, you're in this alleyway, you're like, where do I go now? And yeah, the trying to find the hidden chamber and the key and stuff, I really liked it.
Yeah, and
Hunter gave me headaches in this one because calculating the nearest route to any given location from some other location is not straightforward.
This is definitely a scenario that benefits if you have anything to serve as location connectors to so that you're not making mistakes and going somewhere you shouldn't, which definitely can happen in this one. But yeah, overall, I really like this scenario. It's one of my favorites in the cycle, and I do like that it has that kind of mid-season finale feel. It wraps up the first half. It has that tension of that first time a card gets placed under the agenda from the sacrifices. You're like, wait, what's happening to that one? Why are you going there? So it just has that kind of tension of those sacrifices going under there. But overall, it's not I don't know, I didn't find it too terribly difficult, and not in a bad way. I think it just has a nice balance of still being tense enough to be interesting without smashing you.
It's got a lot of... Go ahead, Nick.
I was just going to say that I like that it takes the strongest part of most investigator decks, which are their allies, and it potentially rips those away from you. It takes a couple steps to get there. And this is going to sound weird, but I kind of wish it was more direct about it, rather than add it to the pool and then maybe it'll get sacrificed. Because I know that's a big penalty to suddenly lose your cat burglar or your Dr. Milan or whatever. But I like that they went for that, and I like that that's a possibility. So, because allies are like far and away, I think, the strongest part of this game, generally speaking. So,
yeah, I think that's a good example of how this game, like, I foresee in an alternate universe, there's this Arkham version where, like, we have our player decks, and, like, of course the campaign is doing interesting stuff, but it doesn't really touch what we're doing in our player deck. But I like that they find ways to, generally in an LCG, your player deck is sacred and you have control over it, and if a character dies in one game, that's fine, they're back the next time around. And that's true in usually most scenarios, right? Your Milan bites it and he's still going to be back, but I like that they introduced that extra layer of if you don't save them, then they're just kaput if it's one of your special unique guys.
Oh man, hearing the horror stories about the ash cans that have lost their Duke, though.
Ooh,
yeah,
that is a feel bad moment.
That's, oh god, I can't even imagine. I would flip the table. Table.
You got to be one bad cultist to grab a dog. Like, if Ashcan and Pete are running around and you're like, I'm getting the dog! Like, oh, man.
That's serial killer tendencies. But I guess if you're sacrificing people, you're probably aware of that already. The endings, I thought were awesome. Like, the fact that, kind of like you're saying, the mid-season finale, like, there's a bunch of different ways it can end. Either through investigating the chamber, or if you have the Necronomicon out, or if you kill Silas, is it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's Silas, yeah.
Like, I liked the varied endings. So,
yeah, this was one that I actually got. This is the first time I ever felt like I lucked into. I don't know if it's, quote unquote, the best ending, but definitely the one that's hardest to get. My friend Dave and I were playing a Jim and Jenny campaign, and I had taken the Necronomicon from the museum, happened to get it out early, and then when Silas came out at the end, we just happened to be in a position to investigate quickly rather than fight quickly. So we're like, yeah, let's just do this, and just investigated the crap out of that location. And then, and this is only my second time playing through it, and I hadn't spoiled the other resolutions for myself yet, so we get into the resolution. It's like, and if you have the Necronomicon in play, I'm like, ooh. So that's the one campaign where I restored Silas.
Yeah.
My 2-player game with my wife, we ended up bouncing in and out of the location to avoid his attacks and just slowly whittling the clues away. But we didn't have the Necronomicon out because it had gotten stolen from us in Essex County. But then in my solo campaign, I was playing Roland, and he has the Necronomicon in his deck. And I was like, sweet, I can see what that's like. And Silas hit the table, and I didn't have the Necronomicon out still, and I was going in and out and drawing cards. I still couldn't get it, and eventually I just had to kill him and end it, because I couldn't survive sitting on table and hoping to draw the Necronomicon. So I couldn't set up for that ending yet, but I'm hoping that in a future campaign I might be able to.
Yeah, and
my playthrough with my wife, it was basically, when a big bad guy pops out in a movie and the characters freak out and just throw everything at him, like guns, knives, whatever. That's what happened. It was like, oh god, it's something scary, and just like fired unlimited ammo into Silas and killed him.
The nuclear option.
Yeah.
I like that there's the two different ways of tackling Silas, or at least getting the victory. I feel like in general the killing him is the easier route, which I think is kind of the intention there. And so a lot of my campaigns I ended up doing that. It's a little, and it's also dependent on location, because the locations are random, that the amount of clues that end up on the final hidden chamber can vary. So I've gotten, some situations where there's like a ton of clues on there. It's like, there's no way I'm getting through that. And then other times it's like very manageable, and depends on investigator too. And the design that Silas doesn't make attacks of opportunity is really cool, and opens up that possibility of that kind of like ducking back out in it. I have no idea what that represents in reality, where you're like, hold on a second, I'll be back.
Yeah, he's chained the wall.
Yeah, he's slow as hell.
No, I mean, I don't know what that would actually look in practice, of like going out of the hidden chamber and back like 12
Oh,
times.
you gotta go out for fresh air every so often. It reeks in there. You gotta leave and come back. And
smells really bad.
Or you can just play Streetwise Jenny and evade him, even at a 7 evade. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I evaded that bastard at least 3 times in that playthrough. It was stupid.
it was pretty horrifying, though, like, as you're playing the scenario and you're like, "Well, so the clues just keep stacking up. We're not spending clues for anything." And then at the end of the scenario, they all just get vacuumed into the hidden chamber. And it's like, oh my god, like, we gotta get through that? Yeah, that was interesting.
The reverse Clover.
So, any notable encounter cards that you guys want to rant and rave about? Or rant and rave at? Or rant and rave to? Yeah, whatever your preference is.
Talked about Kidnapped already. I am a fan of that one. Like I said, I'm a fan of it in theme, like from a game designer's point of view. As a player, I fucking hate it.
Right. Right, of course.
I think the
Everyone was saying
Psychopomp
mine.
song is notable, which gets added to your threat area, and then when you would take 1 or more damage, it basically increases it to 2 additional damage, and it surges as well. That is something that can get nasty if you get, which has happened to me on quite a few occasions, if you get more than 1, because it's not limited to just 1 per investigator.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so I've gotten 2, which is you take 1 or more damage, and then you're taking 4 on top of it, so 5 total. Yeah, it can be pretty nasty.
By half of the
game
investigators,
ender.
yeah.
Yeah.
I've had worse. Oh wait, that doesn't work.
Not yet. I'm trying to remember the. Is it Pathless Country? What one shuts down allies? Dark Country.
Well, you're talking.
It's not Sworded and Silent. That
No,
deals
it's Unhallowed Country.
Unhallowed
Yep.
Country. Yeah, that one. Talk about between Kidnapped and that card. It's just like, oh, I just don't feel like playing allies anymore, guys. It's not worth it. So I thought that one was interesting again from a design standpoint, not necessarily something I enjoyed. But yeah, talking about Psychopomp's song, the Whippoorwill art in this cycle is just on point. Between Whippoorwill itself, Psychopomp's song, and Eager for Death. I love Eager for Death. That
Yeah,
one
that's a
scares
good
the
one.
pants off of me.
There's a guy in our Discord who got the eager for death, like the art, and got it put on a playmat, and it is the most beautiful and horrendous playmat at the same time. Like, I look at it, I'm like, I want that so much, but it's so creepy. It's
Art for the
amazing.
Did
art.
any of you
I
guys...
would say the art for the
sorry, go
original
ahead.
Whippoorwill, like just the enemy Whippoorwill. First glance, I see a fish. Every single time, I see a fish.
Yep.
And I
Yeah,
have to
me too.
stare at it
Yeah.
and go like, wait, there's a beak and wings, so those aren't fins, and yeah, but it's still, it's really good.
Well, it even looks like he's, sucking down a
Right,
whirlpool from the
yeah.
surface of the water, so it's just got a lot of
Yeah.
elements working for it there. Did any of you guys actually grow up with whippoorwills in your backyard? We did.
I
No.
don't think so.
Yeah,
I
they
still
were...
don't know what they sound like. I should really look that up.
No, they have a cool call. It's... I imagine if there were a lot of them calling at once, it would be creepy, but I can't say that I've
Yeah,
ever actually heard
I've
more than
never
one at a
considered them
time.
to be anything horrifying or dreadful, so it's interesting to see that. That'd be like seeing like Bunny Rabbit as an enemy card and be like, what?
They're kind of the stars
Despair
of
Sparrow.
the scenario in one way, because like they have the Psychopomp song and the actual Whippoorwill enemy, and then the flavor text as the agendas advance is talking about how they've gotten excited for some strange reason.
Yeah.
Which turns out to be because someone's just gotten murdered. So they're a little creepy, a little bit.
So I just listened to Whippoorwills, and yes, I did grow up with Whippoorwills in my backyard.
Okay, good.
I was like, oh yeah, because I kind of grew up in the same, I guess, biome as you, Sean. If you
Yeah.
call it that. So we probably shared a lot of the same wilderness animals.
In the
and stuff.
temperate forests of central North America.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So then, I guess, anything else? How do you guys feel about the resolutions and the victory points, and how that was
Resolutions are all pretty much the same except for just how you handled Silas. Like, otherwise they all do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Who got sacrificed most often? Okay, so first of all, I suppose it's worth asking: has anyone completed a run through of this before someone gets sacrificed?
No.
I came real close, but I missed it by a turn.
Yeah, same here. It was pretty close.
I had an Agnes run through where my first 2 encounter cards that I flipped were the key in the chamber. I happened to get set up real quickly, so I'm like, all right,
you're supposed to do those at random,
and I hop in there.
You know you're supposed to assign those at random. You can't look at where you're putting them.
Yeah. It seems like every other time I've played through, they're definitely the last ones I pull. So I feel like luck's got to swing in the other direction at some point. But yeah, then I failed a couple tests fighting Silas somehow, swinging at a damn 6 with shriveling, and still managed to miss. But yeah, missed it. So who gets sacrificed most often for you guys? I feel like Earl bites it way more often than anyone else.
Yeah, same here.
For my playthroughs, it's been Rice.
Rice?
Yeah, and the funny thing is I never ever rescue him. Like I always save the students or kill the
Yeah, he's the harder of the 2 to get, I think.
Yeah, and I've played it 4 times now, and every single time Rice gets sacrificed. I'm like, okay, I don't care. He's not in any of my decks. I'm like, ooh, free card. So
Earl.
Yeah,
for me.
it's usually Earl or Rice. Earl or Rice for me. The one that really matters for next scenario is Armitage, and he hasn't been sacrificed, thankfully. Well, that's not true. There was my Daisy Skids B team campaign where they're always messing up everything, where they just straight up failed and everyone got sacrificed.
Oh.
Yeah.
Did you lose any allies? Like any of your allies?
No. Thankfully, but yeah.
How great would it have been?
Skids had this heroic moment of like, let me go kill this servant of the mouth so that I can help you get clues, Daisy. The servant of many mouths, that is. And then he proceeded to draw a tentacle, retaliate, and got knocked out. Like, that was his first action.
Oh, wow.
That's just like the perfect like symbol of how that campaign goes in general. Wow. That was pretty awesome. But
one thing I think...
I was just going to bring up that one thing I wanted to talk about is that random nature of the hidden chamber and key. Like, there's plays I've had where they are the first 2 cards, and there's ones where they're like at opposite ends, so you have to go all the way to the end to get the key, and then all the way back to get to the hidden chamber. And I was just, I don't know, what do you guys think about that?
I think with card games, you have to accept some level of randomness. I feel like it's better. I've had less swingy experiences with this than I have with frickin' Jazz.
That's true.
Like, if I could count the number of times the Jazz has been in my bottom 5 cards, and I've had 3 times where he's been the bottom card, I'm starting to think I just need to change his sleeve.
No, it's not just you.
But yeah, I mean, yeah. I didn't mind this one. This one didn't offend me. Jazz has offended me from time to time.
Yeah, it's kind of like the anti...
Yeah,
and I know this doesn't really work for card games as much, but I've been watching a lot of video games lately, but it's kind of like the anti-speedrun mechanic. It's like they have to set something up that's different from one play to the next, and in this case, it's just the randomization, and it prevents you from planning around that, which... the gamer part of me is like, why? Like, why does that need to be there? But the designer part of me is like, oh no, that totally makes sense, because you want each experience to be different. So
yeah, I get I guess why I brought it up is because initially I was kind of like, wait, that's kind of not very fair, from a pure fairness, like game design perspective. Like, one person or one campaign could just end up with the easiest run and potentially get no one sacrificed because they're just the first 2 cards, and someone else could just get completely hosed. But the more I thought about it, I think what also helps is that the overall scenario, like I said, isn't too punishing, so you can kind of recover from it.
Yeah.
And I think when I was thinking about it, I ended up liking the decision because I think there's the balance between tension and just the pure fairness example, Because, like, you look at something like Miskatonic Museum, which is a whole different approach where they specifically seed the final hidden, or what is it called, restricted exhibit in the bottom 3 cards. So in that case, they kind of they put the weight on fairness that you know that it's going to be in one of the last 3 cards.
Right.
But what happens if they had done something similar here, then the problem is that, like, I feel like there's a good deal of tension in this one when you flip over that card and, like, what the heck is there? And I think that would be lost somewhat if you knew, like, well, this is one of the first 3 cards, so I know it's not going to be one of the cards I want yet.
You would never flip over.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I think, I don't know. I think, like I said, I think this one's a nice balance of randomness to unrandomness. But yeah, you can still get host. You can still get host hard.
It was a very well designed adventure, I think, overall.
And I think it also bears pointing out that I think solo players, assuming all other variables equal, that they're going at about the same speed as anyone else. Solo players actually get a bit of a boon from this scenario because, you know, a 4-player game, you know, assuming you're doing all right, you know, you've got, like, everyone has a shot at one of the powerful story allies. You know, there's one for each of the stats, and then there's Armitage. So, you know, presumably you'd probably have a shot at getting a cool ally to add to your deck. But if you're playing the same speed on solo, then you're adding, like, probably 3 to 4 powerful allies to your deck, which is pretty
This scenario,
intense.
I was going to say, this scenario made me go double charisma with Roland, so.
So, anyway. Cool little artifact, I suppose. A little bone to the... Unintentional bone, I'm sure. To the... Well, that came out weird. To the solo players. The unintentional bone is the best.
The unexpected bone.
It reminds me of high school.
No. Where Doom awaits is the bone to solo players.
Shut it.
We'll
All right,
there.
cool. So, yeah, we'll get there. So let's move on then to you, ampersand you.
My old favorite.
Player cards. Any standouts?
If it bleeds!
Go on.
No, that's it. That's all he had.
Yeah, it's great. If it bleed... Now, a funny thing is I shouted that out, and then I realized I'm probably thinking of a different card. If it bleeds is the one that you heal the horror of something you just killed, correct?
Monster,
Yes,
yeah.
yes. If it bleeds, definitely. Like, I like the design of the Springfield. I really, really do. But as a solo player, there's no reason for me to take it unless I want to go whippoorwill hunting.
3 damage to a whippoorwill.
Right, but
Woo.
no, if it bleeds is something that both of the Guardian characters can make very good use of. So I'm very happy to see it in the card pool.
And I might be wrong, but I think for the most part, excepting I think whippoorwills, I think so far, only monsters deal horror anyway.
For the most part, yeah.
So that monster restriction is not that much of a restriction because there's not really anyone to play it on otherwise. But yeah, that definitely helps the Roland out, and the fact that it's a level 0 card is not too bad either. And I do like that it is true to Survivor, true to Guardian's thread. So it's got the nice horror removal, which both Guardians like, and it's also got the fact that anyone else at your location benefits from it as well. It's just like this nice sigh of relief across the room when the monster goes down.
I would be remiss as my role as the Survivor player if I did not mention Dark Horse. It's pretty good. If you want to play as a broke investigator, Dark Horse is the way to go. Now, I will say that when I first read it, in my mind, I read Bad Horse. Have you guys ever seen Dr. Horse?
Oh, yeah.
He rides across the nation, the thoroughbred of sin. Yeah,
There it is.
The funny thing is, my first thought was, I can't wait for the upgraded version, Thunder Horse. Metalocalypse fans?
Even darker horse. No, sorry.
Aww.
Yeah, Dark Horse awesome. Like, again, it's kind of like higher education. Like, there's this card.
It's a build.
It created archetypes, right? It's like, oh, I'm playing Dark Duke. I'm playing Dark Agnes. Whatever.
I have a fun Dark Gym deck. It's the first time I've really felt
Dark
that
Gym?
Dark Horse was working for me.
First time you ever used fun and gym in the same sentence.
I'm playing through a campaign with Jim, and I find him so boring.
He's interesting. I like him.
He's there.
But when I play him, I'm like, why do I
He's
like
purple.
him again?
Yeah. Inquiring Mind, also great card. The Seeker skill. If there's a clue, you get 3 wilds. That's insane.
Yeah, I do like that thread in Seeker as well, where it's kind of, there's a little bit more strategy now to when you clear out a location.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a better boon to Daisy than it is to Rex, because Rex just kind of clears out locations with wanton abandon.
Mm-hmm.
It is. I was going to say,
Nick, I feel like this is good for Roland.
yes, it's an amazing roll-in tool in those scenarios where
yeah.
enemies are few and far between.
Because Roland tries to position himself on, he tries to camp on clued locations anyway. So this definitely plays into what he's already doing. And I like that this one can be played for other investigators too,
Yes.
as opposed to Rise to the Occasion, which is another 3 wild. This one's very good in multiplayer.
Mm-hmm.
Ian, anything from you?
Well,
Tell us
the
about
one that
Opportunist Level 2.
It makes a real cool noise when it's in your bike spokes.
Yeah, I like how it feels when it slips into the deck box and just never comes back.
I was
out.
really curious as to how that sentence was going to end.
The one that truly stands out to me the most is the one Scott picked, Dark Horse, because I've been using it a ton with Wendy and makes her even better than she already was. But for the sake of variety, the one I think I like the best is Lucky Dice, but the sad part is I haven't been able to actually get it into any of my decks yet because I've just been pressed for XP in those particular campaigns.
Because Exceptional's a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh.
so it's supposedly 2, but with Exceptional it actually costs 4 XP, which is a lot. So I haven't had a chance, but I like anything that helps me avoid really bad chaos draws. It's my eternal battle against the chaos bag. It's the reason why Survivor's like my second favorite class.
Survivor's like everyone's second favorite class.
Survivor is, the constant
This is-
favorite class.
Lucky Dice is kind of like a survivory card in just that sense that you can kind of manipulate the chaos bag a little bit. So spending 2 resources, ignoring the chaos token, and just revealing another one. So it's super expensive in terms of XP. If you can actually buy it, then it's not that expensive. It's only 2 costs. So yeah, just a matter of I think it'll make a difference when I can play a campaign from the beginning with this in mind, versus like trying to buy it halfway through the campaign.
Yeah, for my part, the Mystic cards here were interesting. Rite of Seeking, I think we talked about this a fair amount when it was spoiled. Decent in multiplayer and high multiplayer counts for certain investigators. I don't think many people take this because it's A, it's spendy, and B, it has an increased play cost, first of all. And just how often are you gonna have 3 clues on a location? Well, in 3 and 4 player a lot, but anyway.
Yeah. It's
Now,
kind of
Alyssa-
overkill in some ways.
Yeah, it's very overkill in most. I think in most situations it's overkill.
Yeah.
Now Alyssa's interesting. I feel like she is not an Agnes card, which is always what I think about. Obviously, I think if there's probably a Kluver Jim build that's out there because he's got decently high starting intellect, and then he's got access to Rite of Seeking and Drawn to the Flame, and she goes in that build. I feel like she's better in solo, kind of similar to what we said about scrying, and I feel like she's also gotten better since Moonlight Ritual has come out. But I honestly have not tried her yet, but she's intriguing to me, and I feel like she's maybe a Marie card more than anyone else.
Yeah,
at the
maybe.
moment.
I mean, I think you're right with the solo. I think she works best in the solo one because you look at the top card of the encounter deck or any player deck. Don't look at your player deck. That's wrong. Look at the encounter deck, and if you're playing the last scenario or Blood on the Altar, you look. It's like, oh, kidnapped. Well, that one I will pay a doom to throw under, or a Night Gaunt or something horrible. But sometimes it's just good to as your turn begins, take a look. Okay, what am I preparing for? And then put it back down. And you still have her +1 intellect boost to you, and also her, she's kind of like a sanity sponge as well. So she seems good. I just, I haven't really found a build that I really want to put her in yet.
Mm-hmm. She'll have a place, I'm sure. Static boosts to fight and intellect, I think, in particular, are very valuable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think the fact that it's just a free trigger to use that helps it a lot compared to something like Scrying. Obviously, you're looking at just the top card, and a lot of times it's like, well, now I know how I'm going to get screwed. That doesn't really help me. But there are times, like, specifically, it's Beyond the Veil, I believe, the one that kills you if you get milled. If all the cards get... Yeah, so that's specifically... There have been countless occasions where I'm thinking to myself, if I draw that card, that's basically game over. So I could see Alyssa is basically the ultimate, save yourself card in that situation, that you keep looking, there it is, okay, put Doom on her, and throw it to the bottom of the encounter deck.
Yeah, so and then I will also, of course, echo the Dark Horse call, because that card is very interesting, very powerful. It requires more finesse to play it properly than I thought when I first saw it.
Mm-hmm.
Because you really have to be on top of when you're gaining that resource and when you know you can spend it during your turn versus when you can't.
And the deck building takes more thought.
Yes,
I'm not saying it's hard, but it's just like you have to be very careful of your cost curve and what you expect to play and when to play it and everything like that. So
you got to be super deliberate.
Mm-hmm.
Like my Dark Gym build is, I think, the only 3 cost card. I think the only 3 or more cost cards I have in there are Shriveling and Rite of Seeking. Everything else is 2 or less. Most of them are 1, and then I'm pretty flush with the neutral skills.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's been serviceable. So yeah, man, eyeing those Survivor cards, just like I guess I'm a mystic in the streets and a survivor in the sheets, because I do more with less.
But
okay, so
that was good.
So then moving into the scenario itself, this one to me I think draws decent parallels with Midnight Masks. Simply because there's an overall objective, and it's not binary win-lose. It's like old school video games. It's like, how much can you do before you fail?
Mm-hmm.
So setting up the scenario, one thing that I am still wondering at, as I'm sure as everyone, is warning the townsfolk versus calming the townsfolk. And maybe I shouldn't. No, I shouldn't spoil this yet, because I haven't played past the first 3 turns of Weird Doom Away, so we'll get there. Which approach did you guys take more often than not?
I calmed them down.
I warned them. I'm a guardian. I warned them.
I mean, is this one that you guys role played, or were you trying to think okay, which one's gonna have the better? Do I think is going to have the better gameplay implication later?
I let my wife choose. I was like, I don't know. It seems like they're about the same. You pick. So
fair enough.
Yeah, these are the kinds of decisions. Yeah, I tend to roleplay depending on investigator. So one of the ones who I tended to play my Ashcan pretty unselfish. So he would try to warn them, and then someone like Jenny, I was playing more on the selfish side, so she tried to calm them down and get the info.
I guess I could say I role-played it unintentionally, because Jim played his trumpet to calm them all down, some smooth jazz. Hey guys, it's okay.
Impromptu concert.
That's what I was. Isn't that a saxophone? But whatever.
Yes. Careless Whisper.
All I can think of is is the extremely greased up saxophone player from Lost Boys, that's the only thing I can think of in my mind. Jim just takes off his shirt, greases himself up, and gets going.
Alternate art for Jim.
Yeah.
I do like the design of this. Like, I love decisions that we make outside of the game. Like,
Yes.
that's what's really just hooking me with Arkham. But
So, similar to Essex County Express, the game just kind of deals you a little bit of a dick punch.
Sticks it to you.
Or a boob punch if you prefer. Yeah, so you just get a weakness. So what do you guys feel about that little
Sucks.
like, no test, no recourse, no way to avoid it, just you get a little crazier.
I think I would have preferred a test maybe, but I don't know.
As with everything, I think that, and this is the exact same thing that I said with Essex County Express, but tie it to a decision I made previously. The fact that it just straight up happens, and I'm okay if it's added to my deck, and then I'm like, shoot, 3 scenarios ago I shouldn't have done X. Like, that's fine. But the fact that it's just like, here you go, like, it didn't feel good when I did it. It still doesn't feel good, so I don't think I'm gonna come around to it.
Nick,
And my problem with it was that it didn't really seem to be tied to anything that happened in the story.
Right.
It seemed
Yeah, exactly.
very, very kind of cold and mechanical.
Mm-hmm.
I think, Nick, I feel what you're saying, and as a player, I'm like, yeah, totally. I want it to be something tied to a decision, but from a design standpoint, I kind of understand it a bit where you're going on in this campaign and the difficulty has to ramp up at a certain pace. And if you're playing for the 2nd or 10th or 20th time through and you know the correct decisions to make, does that then nullify some of the difficulty in this campaign, and is that okay? So I kind of get, like, I would prefer if it came from a decision, and maybe they make it in a way where you're going to get a weakness, it just depends on what type or at what point, depending on decisions, but you have to get one versus just getting one, here you go.
Yeah, I think I don't like it, but I'm more on the side of I'm okay with it, because I think it's kind of like we've, by this point, have had a ton of scenarios worth of leveling up our decks, and I feel like this, along with the extra token in Essex, is kind of the other side of the equation, leveling itself up a bit. I think, like, 90% or 95% of the bad stuff that gets added to the chaos bag or whatever else is because of decisions, and this is an instance where it's not. And I think story-wise, it's supposed to be like, even if you've been doing really well by this point, after all the crazy stuff you've seen, it's gonna wear on you.
You're fatigued.
Somewhat.
You tripped on a stick on your way out of Dunwich.
Yeah. I don't know. To me, I can't help but shake the feeling that there were probably other ways to establish that rise in difficulty within the scenario itself, and I would have much rather seen one of those rather than, here's a bad card, just take it. Here's a bad token, just take it. Shut up, just take it.
I guess I'm coming from the place, too, that in almost every one but one of my campaigns, I didn't add any Elder Gods or tablets to the token bag. Like, my bags are, like, really nice.
Pristine.
Yeah, so I was like, when I got this, I was like, yeah, okay, I probably deserve this. Like, it's just...
What?
Like, yeah.
But even in that case, like, that's stuff that you can plan around through your 2nd or 3rd playthrough.
Yeah,
with,
this one is
like,
just a...
But that's fine. But then in the scenario itself, there should be other ways that make it more difficult, so that even if you didn't add those tokens, scenario 6 or whatever is still going to be a lot harder than scenario 3 without having to just say, take it.
Tying it to a test, somewhat like, was it the Devoured Below? When Umordoth, you have to test like 6 or 7 willpower.
Yeah.
Like, make it an obscene test. I don't even care. Maybe even 8 willpower, right? Test 8. If you fail, take a weakness. Okay, at least I have like a chance of piling on the guts and unexpected courage and
give me the illusion of recourse.
Yeah, exactly.
Which then your 2nd time through, you can plan for that, and you can go, okay, I know that during setup of this scenario, I'm going to need, however many permanents or whatever, or however it works.
is part of the problem that it's a random, just any weakness? Because there are certain weaknesses that particularly hurt certain investigators, like paranoia for Jenny or whatever.
Right.
Like, would it have been better if it was just the particular story weakness that's tied to what's happening in the story and you get it automatically? Like, would that have helped?
I think I would like that better.
Maybe.
If it was like brood fever or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's still, to me, it's the whole, and I get this, and I know I've talked like this in the past where I'm like, you know what? It's an Arkham game. It's going to bend you over and do things you don't want it to do. But at the same time, it still feels like there should have been something, like, there should have been, and again, and Sean hit it too, the illusion of recourse, the illusion of the ability to counteract it, I think is important. And the fact that they don't even try for the illusion, it makes me feel bad playing that scenario. And the worst part is that it's in setup. So it's before I even start the scenario, I'm like, oh my god, like this sucks. And that was part of the reason why I wasn't too huge on Essex County Express, was because the first thing I did was add a negative, whatever it was, 4 or -5 to the bag. And that
It is a bad fifi to have going into the scenario. Like, put it on the backside of like the first agenda or something.
Sure. Yeah. Oh, yeah, totally. That'd be, yes, because then I know I need to accomplish so much before that trips.
All right, so
Okay, how about this? What if it was you're gonna get something bad no matter what, but you get a choice made, and the bad thing you get is gonna depend on what choice you make.
Sure, that's fine.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Because then
some
that's
level of agency.
right. Because then that's something
Yeah.
that my second time through I can go, okay, I chose X last time and that got me internal injury. So this time I'll choose Y, and maybe it'll get me something that's better for my investigator.
I just have to
Do you
this
throw
out there.
yourself down the well or stare into the unknowable void?
In one of my, I believe it's Ashcan, his basic weakness, I forget which one it was, but whenever you take a damage, you also take a horror.
Psychosis or hypochondria. It's one of those two.
It's one of those two.
Hypochondria.
And then when I got the other random one, it was the other one.
Oh.
So basically, if they're
yeah.
both out.
That one's rough, but that one has been FAQ'd that it doesn't infinitely
Doesn't loop you
itself.
into
They
oblivion.
FAQ'd that?
Yeah. Well, I think
Damn it.
I think they either
I don't-
FAQ'd it or they clarified it just via a one-off ruling. But I know that it does not loop itself.
I
into
liked it better as a
infinity.
loop.
I kind of like it
Just
better as a
'cause
loop,
it's
too.
hilarious.
Then it's this
Definitely
mad
a better
dash to
story as a
avoid.
loop.
Yeah.
Yeah. A whippoorwill
Okay, so
comes along
speaking
and kills
of-
you.
God. So speaking of scaling effects, one thing I think is also notable in the setup of Undimensioned and Unseen is that it kind of scales in difficulty of setup based on how you did in Blood on the Altar. So the more sacrifices you had, presumably the worse you did in Blood on the Altar, the fewer big ol' enemies are set up or set aside in Undimensioned and Unseen. So what do you guys feel about that kind of like adaptive difficulty kind of mechanic?
It's interesting that it's the inverse.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't expect it.
I think it's kind of counterintuitive from maybe a thematic standpoint, because it's like, all right, well, is it? I kind of felt like it was implied that these spawns were related to the sacrifices.
That was the
in
thought.
some way.
Yeah, see, that's what I thought. Yeah.
So the fact that the fewer sacrifices you have, the more spawn are out there is kind of story-wise maybe counterintuitive, or maybe there's some clue or context I'm missing out on. But
See,
I get it. I get it from a mechanical standpoint, because the campaign can kind of snowball, and at some point, I feel better about this than just the random weakness that you just gain.
I thought the theme worked fine, where like there's more sacrifices, so that these beasts are satiated. Whereas like if you saved everyone, they're like, "Hey, I want my man meat,"
That's a plausible
Yeah.
explanation.
or dog.
See, those are the two kind of explanations I've seen, and I think how people interpret it is kind of the difference in what you feel about it a little bit, as far as theme at least. Like, because the actual story text doesn't
Right.
explain it, which I thought it would, which might have helped me get through. Like, if the random weakness is some of your guys' sticking point, this was mine. That it's not a huge issue where I'm like, oh, this sucks, but it kind of was just like, this is kind of weird to me. Because I guess the way I was thinking about it is in the original Dunwich Horror story, the way that big, like, monster, or the Dunwich Horror itself is created is basically by, like, weird mating of Yog-Sothoth and I can't remember. I think it's Lavinia Waitley. So I kind of thought, not necessarily that was what was happening to the sacrifices, but I thought I thought the broods were being created from the sacrifices, that, like, because if you look at it, there's 5 potential sacrifices and 5 broods. So I just thought, oh, like the brood, like if someone is sacrificed, then somehow the broods are tied to that. And I don't know, that was kind of my thinking, but I guess I could see if it's more like the sacrifices are meant to, the broods already exist, and the sacrifices are just meant to be a brunch snack.
See, and I always took it as the sacrifices were help, like, awakening the broods or whatever, and I didn't see it as the broods were devouring them. So yeah, it felt backwards to me the first time that I realized that, but I mean, I can see the argument either way.
And then from a gameplay perspective, like my Zoe Rex pair is the one that's been killing everything, and then they didn't do as well in Undimensioned and Unseen because they had to deal with all 5 broods, whereas the screw up Skids and Daisy mosey along after completely just tanking blood on the altar, where they let the ritual go through. Everyone died, and they had the easiest time of Undimensioned because there was only 2 broods to worry about. And so that was, like, I understand, and I'm not necessarily angry at the design decision, because I think it does make sense to, like, give people a bone of, like, why are they going to keep playing at this point if they've just completely, like, have been messing up everything and they have no chance. But on the other hand, it just does feel a little weird that, like, the campaign that is kind of been messing up everything can just kind of waltz through this scenario.
Ian, I always love hearing stories about your Daisy and Skids. Like, that campaign sounds like the most, like, entertaining campaign ever, and I just see them, like, frolicking and skipping through a meadow, like, oh, this campaign's so much easier now that all our friends are dead. Like,
I just kind of always imagine, because Ian, I know you're fond of making playlists and soundtracks, I imagine that it oscillates back and forth between yakety sax and, like, the chase music from a Scooby-Doo episode.
Yeah, pretty much. The funny part is, even in this scenario where they were doing okay, Skid still resigned before the end. I think he's resigned in, like, half of the scenarios and left Daisy on her own to try to finish it out. Like, she's just sighing by this point, like, cheeks. Oh my god. Yeah, yeah. But she had a higher education, so she's like, whatever.
Okay, then. So then, once you start playing, I think the main mechanic here, well, obviously the main mechanic here, is dealing with those broods, and oh my god, the movement phase is so freaking stressful. I think it makes you make some really interesting decisions on where you end your turn, more than anything else, and kind of figuring out, okay, where are the connections, where's the bottleneck. I think it's the 10-acre meadow, which kind of sounds like where Christopher Robin plays. That's kind of the bottleneck. So that's always the one, like, I avoid like the freaking plague. And yeah, I don't know. I enjoyed it. I liked that mechanic. It was stressful, and I had one campaign that just got absolutely boned by, like, they might as well have had the hunter keyword.
Right. So show hands, or whatever, how we do this, who used the locations, like they recommend to shuffle them, whatever, or who just assigned numbers and rolled a d6? Because we just assigned numbers and rolled a d6 for the random movement.
Oh, I used the locations because I'm a sheep.
I started rolling after a couple of games where I'm like, yeah, forget this, I'm rolling. It
does lead me to question whether my sleeves and shuffling technique played to my detriment.
I've done
It's hard to shuffle 6 cards, but
yeah, I think that's why I started using a die too. I was like, I don't trust myself anymore. I'm gonna leave it.
I started with a die, and then the next time I was setting up, I actually read it, and I was like, oh, that's right, I can just use the other. I didn't even think about that. So I just use the cards from now on.
Okay. So, how did you guys feel about the mechanic of the clues moving to the brood and only being able to fight them with the esoteric formula? That whole kind of
esoteric.
I guess forced need for willpower more than anything.
I'm okay with it.
They gave you.
I mean, if you have low willpower, you kind of have a way to deal with it.
Yeah, they gave you enough
but...
tools to get around that with characters between the locations and the powder of Ibn-Ghazi, which you very likely got from the previous scenario, but potentially not.
So they force you into a specific way of playing, but they give you the tools to deal with it.
So
Interesting.
everybody remember that.
Interesting.
For future discussion.
Yeah. I liked it overall. I think it was a nice change of pace. Like, at this point of the campaign, for some of the investigators, especially the very fighty ones, it gets to the point where it's like, oh, hi, big scary monster, you're dead. You know? So I like that this mechanic made it feel like this is something different, that you have to fight differently. And even though I was griping about the setup a little bit earlier, this is one of my favorites, along with Bullet in the Altar. Like, I really like this midpoint, like... These two are kind of tied together in my mind, and part of what sells it for me is the location aspect. Like, I love all the flavor text of how exactly the clues are helping you.
Yes.
Like, it could have just been very dry, like, oh, put a clue on them, but each one is different. You know, like, I can't remember off the top of my head, but like having them wade through this area and like using some kind of environmental
throw water on them at
thing
some point,
here.
I think.
Yeah, there's like all kinds of stuff, and then
water, and
some of the locations,
and fog and rain.
Yeah,
and some of the locations have where you can affect their movement, which is really cool too. Like by luring them, which was super helpful for Skid since he can't do much else in the scenario. But yeah, locations really sell the scenario for me, I think.
Yeah, I liked the outlay of the map. I think the broods were a reasonable enemy. And they kind of gave you a couple tools to help you along if you're not Agnes with 1,000,000 willpower. If you have Mind Wipe in your deck, it just destroys the broods. Apparently their minds are very weak. Yeah, I mean, you don't get the VP for them because it erases the VP, but I mean, yeah, it's awesome.
But if you have 3 in play and you can't deal with all 3 of them, or one of them has 2 copies of Towering Beasts on it or whatever, yeah, just mind wipe it.
Yeah. Okay, bye.
This was the one where I mentioned it on the last episode that I fell into the Whipper Whirlpool.
Yeah.
It's bad. No, but I really liked the whole mechanic with the broods. I thought it was a really cool kind of focus for the scenario, and I had completely forgotten that element of the broods of Yog Sothoth from Sothoth. I had forgotten that aspect of the monsters from the Dunwich Horror, the fact that it was literally invisible to everyone. They couldn't see it as it was tromping around the countryside until the professor came up with this powder or read the formula for the powder or whatever it happened to be. So that was cool to see that, and not only get reminded of that really important aspect of the monster, but also kind of see the mechanical way to deal with it and express it.
Yeah, I guess one way they do try to balance it in the other direction is if you do mess up Blood on the Altar, you don't have the powder, and so you just have to rely on location, so that does make it a bit more challenging from that angle. But I tend to like the scenarios that really emphasize the map and movement, because that's part of why I really like this game, and this does that a lot. Like you were mentioning that, Sean, that you have to be really thoughtful about when you move or when you don't move, because you're like, especially because there's quite a few like hunter thralls in this encounter deck, the avian and the lupine thrall, so it's like, okay, let me move over here, so this one moves here, and maybe the brood is going to move there. It's just kind of, you live and die a bit based on your movement.
Sure do. All right. So resolutions. How many broods are you guys averaging?
2 or 3. I've never gotten
3,
all of them.
I think 3 is a good, like, if you get 3, you're doing okay.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
is it important how many you got or how many get away? Because that's variable too. Because obviously fewer can get away based on how many are set up at the beginning of the game. So how many generally get away for you guys?
2 most of the time.
Yeah, about 2. My first playthrough was 4, which sucked. Yeah, TikTok.
Yeah, mine too. First playthrough was real rough. Yeah, I'm sitting at about a 2, and I think my Agnes deck did the best. Surprise, surprise. My solo Agnes build got 4 of them. Never gotten them all.
Yeah, me either. Ashcan did the best with 1 getting away, but I think 2 is about average.
All right. So, Nick, I'm curious at your note here that the scenario ends with a whisper.
I really felt there wasn't really like a climactic finish to it. It was like, and this has happened both times I've played it, where next thing I know, I'm like, oh, I'm 1 turn away from this last agenda popping. Like, that just kind of came up, and nothing has really changed. Like, it wasn't, you weren't really building to anything. It was just manage these things under X turns. So it felt like it kind of ended with a whisper rather than going out with a bang, which I'll always take the bang, personally. But that's just personal preference.
You don't like careless?
Well, you just go to sleep at the end of it, don't you?
Yeah, you collapse from exhaustion.
No sleep.
It's careless
Yeah,
whispers.
There's Jim again.
Get out of my bedroom, Jim.
God damn it, Jim. Get a saxophone. Play that song on a trumpet. Yeah, no, I see that. But this one to me felt a lot more like Midnight Masks, where you choose when to end it, so it kind of doesn't have a set story beat that is a climax in that way. So, yeah. Any notable encounter cards you guys want to point out? How about what's the one that makes them all move toward you? That one.
Oh God, yeah.
Is
attracting
the worst.
attention.
Attracting attention, because most of the time you're cowering a location away from them at most anyway. So all of a sudden it's like, ah! And it surges. Doesn't it also surge?
It does.
Why does that surge?
Because they're surging
It's
towards
the LOTR sickness.
That must be the brood
also
fever we talked about.
Yeah, the brood fever.
Is it Towering Beasts? I think I missed this on my first playthrough, but I realized on the second one where it's a Towering Beast that says attached to an abomination enemy.
Yes.
And I always thought it was just the broods, but it turns out the thralls are actually abominations as well.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes it was more advantageous to put it on a thrall than or one of the broods. So
I think it's not Towering Beast, it's Altered Beast.
They both
Altered
attach.
Beast.
Because I think Towering Beast is the one that heals the brood and deals 1 horror to
Yeah.
everybody at the location when it attaches, or when they enter it. But Altered Beast...
Towering Beast is the +1 fight, +1
That's
health, and then which attaches specifically to a brood, and then the Altered Beast
Any
is abomination, and that's the 1 horror one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
That's the like tribble scorpion
Yeah,
in the tree.
the playmat one. Yep.
Yes.
yeah. Towering Beast is the one that I just absolutely hate. That's like
I save a test of protection for that every time.
yeah. It's like, oh, I almost killed you. Nope, you have more health now.
And you're harder to hit.
Yep.
Boo. All right. Well, any closing thoughts on these last 2 scenarios? The kind of the mid-season mid-season finale and kind of the mid-season pickup.
I liked them both a lot for the most part.
Yeah, they're really good.
These were the high point of the campaign for me thus far.
I think so too,
yeah. Very entertaining.
So should we... Oh, we're going to do Tentacle Time first. I was going to say, should we move on to the low point of the campaign?
Yeah. Well, okay. So let's keep Tentacle Time high and tight here this week, so that way we can move on and Nick can partake of that conversation before he has to jet off. So, Scott, what's grabbing you?
You know, I've been really busy being a dad because my kid was homesick from daycare for the last week and a half.
Yes.
But I would like to just show a project that my wife made for Father's Day, and a certain Sean helped out with this project, and she made me basically a custom investigator, like I am the investigator, and made like a weakness or a treachery, basic weakness, and a custom item and stuff. And so I put them in the live podcast chat, the pictures of them. I thought it was really cool. And I must point out, Sean suggested that the deck size be 31 because of my hatred for going over deck size minimums. And oh my god, it turns those screws. It's
so the
awesome.
burning question in everyone's mind is, have you played with yourself?
No, but you know what? I'm thinking of putting myself in my ass in a future. Yeah, so that's my Arkham Solo series for people who are not. I don't want to sound
Very
weird.
If this is your first episode.
Yeah. So I'm going to see if I can get this into Octagon, and maybe I'll do a quick campaign with it.
That'd be
or
great.
something. But yeah, I don't know. I thought it was pretty awesome, and the text "I'm going to bed at 8
my
o'clock tonight"
favorite.
is something I say like every single night, and it never happens.
Dude, yeah.
Yeah.
I feel ya.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Ian?
Well, I had something else originally I was going to talk about, but then I had one of my Kickstarters show up. One of the very first things I ever kickstarted, I believe, Gloom of Killforth, which is a co-op fantasy card game. The person who designed it actually was one of the very first LOTR LCG custom scenario designers under the name of Ninja Dorg. So the funny part is him and Matt Newman were kind of one of the very first custom scenario designers, and now Matt Newman, of course, designs our game, and Tristan is the name of the designer, designed this Gloom of Killforth. So very cool game. You can play it solo, and it's a kind of game where you actually don't lose much of the experience playing it solo. There's a big map of like 25 locations, which represents the land, and you go around kind of leveling up your character, getting new stuff, and eventually facing a big baddie. So in some ways it kind of reminds me of Talisman in card form, but with way better mechanics. And it's a really good game, has lots of great art. I think the cool thing is they just used one artist, which helped make the art feel very coherent, and the particular artist is really talented in my opinion.
Nice.
I put a example of one of the cards in the chat, and our very own Tom helped with some of the graphic design, so that's also worth mentioning. And I do like the graphic design. Like, it really bothers me in some card games when there's just like a billion things on the card and it's too busy, and I like that this is pretty straightforward. So good game. The problem is that it's mostly available just if you kickstarted it, but I think you probably can track down a copy if you're interested. I'm not sure exactly on the mechanics. I think they might be doing a second printing at some point, but recommended if you like the fantasy theme, and I think people who like this game, Arkham Horror, will like that one. And then I just wanted to give a very brief short shout out because I just discovered that there is a Dreams in the Witch House rock opera.
My greatest dreams have come... No, that's my greatest nightmares have come true.
I just discovered this a couple days ago, and my life will never be the same.
Is there an ode to Brown Jenkins?
No, but he is represented in several songs with someone singing the Brown Jenkins parts. And if you look up the video for oh gosh, what is the song called? Blessed Be the Faithful. There's a guy dressed up as Brown Jenkins in it, and then at one point, if you know the story at the end, spoiler alert, Brown Jenkins busts through the main character's chest and eats out his heart. In this one, in the music video, he busts through his heart and then proceeds to continue with his mandolin solo. So it is freaking amazing.
Oh, chalk that up among things I thought I'd never see. Brown Jenkins with a mandolin solo.
It is, yeah. Just check it out. It's just called Dreams in the Witch House rock opera.
Cool. Nick?
Yes. Recently, with some emails from fans kind of urging me forward, I decided to finally start up season 2 of my solo audiobook podcast, Enter the Novelcast. So I'm currently in the process of recording and editing the entirety of season 2, and that should hopefully start releasing at the end of July. July 31st is kind of my goal. We'll see if I get there or not. This is a longer book that I'm doing for this one, so it's probably episodes are probably going to release on Monday, Wednesday, Fridays. But basically, it's a podcast where I narrate a book that I wrote as an audiobook. And since this one is longer and features multiple characters, I'm going to be partnering with some friends to do some voice work for me so that it's not just me running my vocal cords through the whatever you would run vocal cords through. It's
Air, generally.
So, yeah, there you go. So yeah, Enter the Novelcast. You can find it on my website, nicholascorey.com. Check it out. Eventually, you can check out season 1 now. So
Sweet. Yeah, normally I comment on some kind of game or entertainment media that I've been spending my time on, but the last few weeks have been nuts for me. I've broken 3 cars. Our AC stopped working. At the end of March, our hot water heater went out. Oh, by the way, I only have 2 cars, so it's a feat that I broke 3.
Achievement unlocked.
Yeah, pretty much. So that's been a lot of my, quote unquote, free time lately. But the one thing I did do earlier this week is I, for the first time in 3 years, upgraded my phone. And I used to be super into phones, like custom ROMing and jailbreaking and rooting and all that kind of stuff. And I got out of it just because of how much of a time sink it can be. So 3 years without a new phone was kind of a thing. So I've been spending like the last 48 hours just dicking around with my phone the entire time.
Did you break the old one though?
No, it's still
okay,
here.
good.
It's just the battery's a little worse for wear. I'd run through it in half a day.
Yeesh.
But that's just because I can't access Discord on my work computer. Okay, guys, so let's move on into our...
Sorry, really
guys,
quick. I want to just throw this out. If anyone's interested in reading the Dark Tower series, we're doing like a book club on our Discord.
Yes.
It's the Dark Tower. The Gunslinger, the first book, is due the 24th, I think we decided, 26th or whatever, and then we're going to talk about spoilers. But just throwing it out there if anyone wants to join in. That's it.
Agree. And I'm trying to think, when is kind of the moratorium lifted on the Gunslinger?
The 24th or 26th? It's in the notes for the channel. It says like...
I believe it's the 24th, yeah.
Yeah, it says like due date, whatever, and then we'll have due dates for each book, so that's when we can talk about spoilers from that book, etc. But yeah, come join us.
Very excited about that. I'm in it as well, though I unknowingly started the series in mid last year. Basically, I've been doing a thing where I oscillate back and forth between a few different series I'm rereading. So I started Lord of the Rings, and then I read The Gunslinger, and then I read Game of Thrones, and then I read Two Towers, and then I read Drawing of the Three, and then anyway, so back and forth. But now I'm just kind of focusing on the Dark Tower series because I'm a slow reader, so it's just going to take me forever to get through it anyway. And the movie snuck up on me. I felt like it was at least another year in the future. So,
and it's also the best book series ever. So I mean,
it's up there. All right, guys. So let's do our very first Mythos Busters hotline call.
Hey there, listeners. Ian here. Just a heads up that the next segment contains extensive spoilers for the Where Doom Awaits Mythos pack. So if you're looking to avoid those spoilers, then now would be a good time to check out the podcast, and you can come back and listen to the rest of the episode when you're all caught up.
Hey, Mythos Busters. This is Travis from near Salt Lake City. Just want to first say how much I'm enjoying the podcast and everything you guys are doing to support this great game we all love. You guys are doing awesome. So, just wanted to get your thoughts real quick. And there's a slight spoiler here, so I just wanted to preface it by saying that, but I recently received and played the latest Mythos pack, Where Doom Awaits, which was an awesome scenario. Loved it, very tense, very close, and I was able to survive by the skin of my teeth. But as I was reading the resolution, I happened to read the other resolution I could have got had I not fared so well. And I was kind of shocked to see that it ended the campaign, which I thought was interesting. I had kind of got lulled into the sense of that it didn't matter how well I did in a scenario, that I would always be able to move on to the next scenario. And obviously that is not the case with this one. There's a possibility that the campaign ends with the 5th Mythos pack. So just thought that was interesting. I think Matt Newman is doing an awesome job, always keeping us players on our toes, and I think it's pretty neat. So just want to give your thoughts about the idea that a campaign might end before even the 6th Mythos pack. So, all right, guys, thanks again. You guys are doing awesome work. Have a great day. Bye.
Well, so that's Arkham Files trademark.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you, Travis, for calling in. That call was exactly what we're looking for, as kind of a discussion topic-based call. So appreciate that. Now, let's actually talk about what Travis wanted to talk about before I do my thing. So what do you guys think about Resolution 2 and of Where Doom Awaits that seemingly can end the campaign?
Can I
before the final pack?
I have a few notes that I just want to go over real quick because I'm going to have to jump off here in the next few minutes. So I just want to make sure I say this, and then you guys can either ignore or discuss or extrapolate however you want from there. But I love this scenario. Like, I love the theme behind it. I loved setting up the locations. I loved getting to Agenda 2 and seeing the writing on it. I loved everything. Like,
that must be nice.
Well, I'll admit, like, getting to as in sleeving. Like, when I put it in a sleeve, I was like, whoa! So, I really do like where this scenario is going. But it felt really bad getting that resolution and ending the campaign. And my knee-jerk reaction was like, that sucks. Like, that's terrible. Like, why would they do that? And then I thought about it, and I paid attention to some of the discussion on Discord where people are like, this is awesome. This is so ballsy of them to do it. You know, kudos to them. It's well-designed, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, yeah. I'm like, I get where the designers, where Matt and the designers, whoever did the scenario, was coming from in wanting to end the campaign here, because there's no guarantee you're going to get to Mythos Pack 6. We were never guaranteed that. But at the same time, I kept going back to, okay, so currently I'm part of a group who is putting together a custom campaign. And I kept going back to the idea where if someone in that group said, what do you guys think of ending the campaign at scenario 5 or at 7 unless you do extremely well and can get to 8? And my knee-jerk reaction is always to say, I don't like the idea of locking out content from the majority of players. Like, if you do really, really badly and then don't get to 8, like, that's totally fine. But if you do everything... Yes, Casey, I know we've had this conversation already, but I haven't talked to these guys about it, so I'm talking to these guys about it. So if you do really poorly and then can't get to 8, that's one thing. But if you do everything except for the best and can't get to 8, that's something totally different. And that, to me, is just a super big feel-bad. Now, Sean and you guys, I'm sure, are going to talk about the actual specific mechanics of how this scenario works. And I do have problems with that as well. But since
aren't we?
But since this viewpoint is probably one that is exclusive to me, I figured I would share that before I head out, but instead of getting into everything else that you guys are going to cover. So my whole thought, and I'm not trying to claim that I'm anywhere on the design level that Matt or anybody who works on this game is at. That's just the closest comparison that I can make. And if it were up to me, I would have said, no, don't lock out that last scenario, because that's going to feel bad to a lot of people like it did to me. So I don't agree with that part of it. And I also agree with Sean on a lot of the points he's going to bring up in a little bit. But that's all I wanted to get out there. Sorry that I got to jump off early, but I will definitely catch you guys next time, and I'm sure we'll talk about this on Discord anyway, beyond this. So,
yeah, I'm sure this will be an ongoing discussion.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, Nick.
Yep. See you guys.
See you, Nick. I gotta say, the the fact that the campaign can end and at scenario 7, like the size of the brass balls on Matt to make this well done, sir. Like that is, oh man, the design perspective of that, especially in a scenarioed game like this where people are waiting a month to play the next thing, and to have this be a possibility. I know we're going to discuss on the chances of this possibility maybe are a bit iffy, but the fact that it exists, I think that's amazing. I love it. I think it's so artful.
Yeah.
Not that that's a defense of what happens, but it's just...
It's certainly one that people use.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm also of the separate, this discussion is separate from the actual mechanics of the scenario, but just the actual existence of the possibility of ending your campaign in this scenario, I like a lot as well. Sadly, Nick can't be here to debate us back, but I think he made his points pretty well. But the things I like about it is that on the one hand, I like the story aspect that it makes sense to me. Like either you get to the top and get through that portal, which takes you to the next scenario, or you don't. And if you don't, that's pretty much the end of the campaign. If you're not able to do the job and stop Seth from doing what he's doing and get through, then that's it. So on that level, it makes sense. And then, I just like the aspect that now it makes getting to the last scenario a sort of extra achievement. Like it's not just a given, like I made it through to that last level. And it also just, I guess the main thing I like about it is just the tension it gives to this particular scenario that it wouldn't have otherwise, because it would just be like, maybe I failed and something bad will happen to me in the last scenario, like has been the case throughout the rest of the campaign. But I've had to recover after each play of the scenario because it's just been so tense. And when I was going to play my Jenny campaign, I was literally stressed out the whole day. And not in a bad way, but just oh my God, what am I going to do if Jenny doesn't make it through to the last scenario? And so every turn, every action was just so filled with tension in my game of Where Doom Awaits.
Jenny's fine. She has Streetwise. Whatever.
Yeah, but that particular game came down to what very last Doom. There's one Doom away from losing it and managed to get through somehow. So, yeah.
I like too that in the what do you call it, the fold out pamphlet thing, it has you put things in the campaign log and then it ends your campaign. Yogg-Sothoth becomes one with time and space. Oh, by the way, you lose, but make sure to put that in your campaign log because it's important. It's not just
you gotta make sure.
It's not just a paragraph you read. It's put in your campaign log. Oh man, that's just turning the screws just a little bit more. I was oh God.
My face check was as it is with every scenario, was with Ashcan, and I've talked before about how he just crushes every scenario. Well, he did not do so well this time. And so I just wrote Yogg-Sothoth in big letters across his campaign notes. That was his fate.
So, I know I've probably been kind of subtle about it, but I think maybe the keener among you have picked up on the fact that I have some gripes with this scenario.
Summon the soul.
Yes, subtle. That's a word.
So, but that being said, the gripe, I really only have one gripe. That is, everything else is kind of ancillary to that. So, aside from that gripe, the idea that the campaign can just end, I'm pretty okay with it. I think it is an odd place to be, given that the I guess the release structure of the game. Because say you're kind of casual on this game, you're following it pack at a time, you play it once, you only have one campaign, you're not really playing with any friends, something along those lines. I don't know how many people like that actually exist, but follow me here anyway. And you play this and you're likely to get fucked. That's just the way this is kind of designed. You have a bad time, you end the campaign. I mean, at that point, do you just go, what the fuck am I playing this game for? Am I going to buy the last scenario? I can't play it. Whiskey Tango Foxtrot, bro. So,
Yeah.
that. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Scott.
No, you continue your point.
Well, okay. So that piece, like I said, I don't know how common that type of player actually is. It's probably a very small part of the demo. And I feel like ultimate failure is fun and flavorful as an option, but like Nick, I feel like it should be a little harder to get. It should be like you have to fail, and then things end, as opposed to you have to achieve kind of the top, I guess, echelon of achievement, and then you don't die.
And it's not an easy scenario.
No, it is not.
Well, especially for solo, I've seen a few comments that people have been having an easier time, and I've noticed that those have been predominantly multiplayer games. So far, I've only played it solo, and those have been difficult. So I think there is a thing of what you're playing. If you're playing solo, even with strong investigators, it's very difficult. Multiplayer, maybe there's more ways to manage it.
Yeah, I think one of the things you brought up, Sean, and I think is key, is the fact that it's something that comes out once a month, and everyone sits with bated breath, and then the release date hits, and then the encounter spoilers chat on our Discord just explodes with comments.
That was mostly my fault.
Yeah, like once a month, right? Like it just. But I mean, like sometimes I won't get the pack for like a day or two after release, and I mute the encounter spoilers, and I go back, and it's like 400 unread messages. I'm like, holy moly! But because it comes out once a month, and you've waited so long, and then all of a sudden your campaign's over, that feel bad is real. Like that is totally, it can be a negative player experience. And if this was a game where we bought a box and we got all 8 scenarios in one box, I could see people being a little less salty about it, because it's like, okay, well, I played 7/8 of this game, but I lost right before the end, which is apparently like what happens in Eldritch Horror all the time anyways.
You get to 7/8?
Yeah, exactly, right? Like it's expected, but because of the story nature of this game, I don't think it's as expected. And Ian, you're right, like it's difficult, and kind of on Nick's point, like you have to do the best to continue. You can't do average and continue, which I think is a big thing.
Well, it's a binary, right?
Yeah.
It's like you either do it or you don't. The casual aspect is interesting, because I think my first play experience was Ashcan losing. I think part of the reason why it didn't bother me that much is because I have like a billion campaigns going. So it's like one down, the one I really cared about the most was like Jenny and Wendy. So hopefully they'll get through. But I can imagine there are definitely players out there, a lot of who don't really engage in these type of discussions on Discord. They're just at home playing the game. And yeah, I could totally imagine you have that one campaign, you lose, that's it. And it's like, okay, what do I do now? So that's interesting.
Have Skids and Wendy played this one yet?
Oh, Skids and Daisy?
Skids and Daisy,
No,
sorry.
they have not.
I am very
want to hear
interested.
the follow-up on that.
Yeah.
I will laugh so hard if they succeed. If they
You know
actually
what?
survive.
Given what I know, and I don't know much because I haven't actually been able to play this scenario very far.
They might actually be okay.
They might actually be well positioned to do it. So
It's just so ridiculous. Oh my god.
It will.
okay, so let's
But they-
stop beating around the bush. So to preface, I want to preface this because this is going to be a pretty salty rant, and I don't want it to taint anything on the overall sense. I think the reason this sticks out as such a sore thumb to me is because the game has been so brilliant up to this point. So I definitely want to emphasize that because I'm about to get real negative here. The game's brilliance, I think, has been in a couple things. A, that there are many things to do in a campaign, and there are many ways, or in a scenario, and there are many potential ways to get there. And every class is positioned in different varying strengths and methods to accomplish all of those things. And I think that is I can't think of a game where the class design, the faction design, is better than in Arkham. And the other thing is that you've got this ongoing campaign, and if you're playing per the rules, like I'm a dirty cheater, and there are certain rules I bend, but for the most part, I'm honoring my resolutions. and given that that's the thing, having that, okay, your campaign ends now, be kind of really easy to get is a bit of a sticking point for me. So anyway, the reason that I wanted to point that out is I think the game is overall brilliant, and the only reason that I hate this so much is because it undermines the brilliance that the game has kind of set up as an expectation hitting up to this point, if that made any sense.
I think so. So I mean, like, let's talk about the specific thing that I think that you're having an issue with is the lower path and the ascending path. Mm-hmm. Like the two locations where it has an action on it that says investigate. If you're successful, discover one of the other winding paths or altered paths or whatever beside it. I think a big sticking point with a lot of people, and you know what, I completely agree with this, is that because it's an action on that card and it's not just a normal investigate test, if you're playing solo Agnes and you're
solo Zoe or solo Ashcan.
Yeah, like a lot of them where you're using weird ways to get clues, so Drawn to the Flame, Rite of Seeking, Look What I Found, all these ways around investigating, it might be very, very hard to pass that investigate test. And I think...
Yeah, welcome to half your deck being obsolete.
Exactly. I mean, when you get on those other paths, you're still going to be able to use those investigation cheats, if you will. I think a way that they could have corrected this maybe would just have the text, when you successfully investigate this location, then find the location, and not have it be an action, right? So you can still use Drawn to the Flame or like anytime you would find a clue at this location, find a path instead or something. I think that would have made it a little easier on a lot of investigators.
Yeah, so really, and I just want to make this clear, I only have a gripe with that single mechanic.
Mm-hmm.
And that is it. Like, absent this mechanic, I'm totally fine with the campaign being able to end. Absent this mechanic, I'm totally fine with the rest of the scenario just being ball-breakingly hard. But I feel like it's kind of this weird subversion of everything you're supposed to be doing up to this point. So I have Rite of Seekings, I have my Drawn to the Flames, I have a couple Look What I Founds. The entire way through the campaign, my deck has been able to operate with these things, and that's my solution for investigating. And then I hit this scenario where very specifically, like, it just says no. Just hard no. Nothing you can do about it. You've got icons, and that's it.
Yeah,
Yours
no
always,
flashlight.
Yeah,
nothing.
No flashlight, no... Yeah, I mean, just everything you've been counting on and playing with up to this point in the campaign is just shut down, hard countered.
Yeah, it's interesting because I had come off my play of Jenny of this that I talked about on a big high, having that last minute win. And in a lot of ways, it was paying off what I was expecting from this game, that more than any other game, you get attached to this character and you care about what happens to them. And so you get that like level of emotion that you're not going to get in other games, that, oh, I managed to pull off the win and save them. But then I started hearing your experience with Agnes, Sean, which I hadn't even considered because I hadn't played with a really low intellect investigator. I did play with Ashcan, but he failed. And I was also using Duke incorrectly a couple times, which I think there are a lot of people who are probably playing this incorrectly as well.
Based on what I've been seeing on the forums and the comments, I imagine a lot of people are accidentally stacking investigate actions. And that
I think it's super easy to
matters.
miss. Yeah, it matters big time. So the thing is, once you were going over your experience and I was thinking about it, I was like, yeah, that is it. I don't like that particular design of it, because I think it does, like I said, in multiplayer, there's more ways to kind of get around things, but in solo, particularly with certain investigators, I think it's too much. The thing is, if it was like one location or maybe two locations where you had to do that, that's acceptable. But you have to do this minimum 4 times possibly up to 6 times, because I think in both sets there's one with 0.
Oh,
right?
that's my favorite. That's my favorite.
Yeah.
When I bust my ass and I sit on that location for 3 turns drawing cards just to get the icons to pass that fucking test, and then throw 4 cards to the test, pass it. The location that comes out has no clues. That's the closest I've come to actually flipping the table in gaming.
Not to mention your AC is broken at this point.
Oh yeah, there's that too.
Yeah, that does.
But that's
help.
my own shit. I'm not going to blame that on Matt.
But I mean, even so, you think about, okay, well, what does Agnes have to deal with that? Arcane Steadies. So if you have to do this 4 to 6 times, you're probably having to booster like 3 a pop each time just to get 2 over. That's at least 12 resources minimum. And that's assuming you don't fail any of those, or don't boost them any higher. So to my mind, that's just not realistic of giving that particular investigator. And it's not just Agnes. It's also Zoe. It's also Ashcan, who can't use Duke. There's a few others that I think it's just too much. And again, it's the fact that it's paired with a potential campaign ending. Like, maybe it would be a little more
imminent campaign ending.
Yeah, it'd be a little bit more palatable if it was just some other scenario. But the fact that in a scenario where you can lose the whole campaign, this mechanic exists. Like, I don't know. I would support. I'm usually not a fan of errata, but I would support an errata in this particular case that changes that to a reaction that if you, instead of, like Scott was saying, instead of succeeding and discovering clues, then you spawn the location instead.
Yeah. I think my biggest problem with it is this feels like Lord of the Rings design. And I love Lord of the Rings, but I love Lord of the Rings in Lord of the Rings. And what this does is it narrows the deck types that can handle it. It narrows your investigator usable card pool, which is fine for Lord of the Rings because you're playing every scenario as a one-shot. You can change your deck at any given moment without bending any rules, without any house ruling. And that's very common. It is actually one of the fun things about Lord of the Rings is you kind of have to tech your deck against each specific scenario for the most part. But in Arkham, where the rules are that you maintain this single deck throughout the campaign, and throughout the rest of this campaign, the way I get clues is kind of an unconventional way. And then for the campaign to just go, oh, no, not anymore, and now you die. Like, it's so NPE. Like, so NPE. It's the first NPE experience I've had in this game. And sorry for anyone who's not aware of the term. NPE is negative player experience. Where I was literally mad at the game, and not just, like, fake mad and bravado because I lost. Like, often happens. So yeah, like Ian said, if it had been worded differently, where when you investigate successfully here, discover a location, that would do it. It would still be uber hard for Agnes, because just of the it does still neuter Drawn to the Flame, but it would be workable. There would still be a solution that is reasonable for that investigator or investigating type to bring to bear. But seriously, I've not played past turn. Well, I mean, I've played quite a few turns on it. I've never gotten past Agenda 1 or Act 1. And basically I've never gotten more than 2 locations on the board past what starts in setup. And it's just so frustrating.
Have we found a place where Agnes is not good? Finally. Have we found our Carton Doom for the Lord of the Rings players out there?
That's the thing, is like, I fully accept that not every investigator needs to be the best in every scenario, and Agnes has been a strong front runner up to this point.
The front runner.
But again, we're narrowing the play and deck space, and I don't think that's what the design in this game has done up to this point, and I don't think it's fun design for a player to experience. If there's an extra cost to investigating, fine. If there's a weird choice you have to make, great. But it's just like, nope, shut down, done. Nothing you can do. It's the immune to player card effects of this game, essentially. And that is, it's shutting down design space. It's not exploring it.
The thing is, you could potentially, like, throw in a bunch of pieces, like newspaper and whatever, to try to take into this quest, but the nature of this game is you can't do those kind of changes last minute unless you have, like, 1 billion XP to spend. So it's just not as feasible and not as realistic, I guess, to expect that. And, yeah. The thing about it is, I know you haven't been able to experience it, Sean, because you haven't gotten very far.
It'd be wonderful if the scenario that I paid for would let me play it.
The rest of the scenario is great.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
It's a fantastic. Like I was saying, my Jenny play, like this was going to go up there as potentially my favorite scenario in the cycle. It's really just this one thing that the scenario hinges on that drags it down a bit for certain investigators.
Yeah, I think the story aspect of this scenario, like getting to the top of that hill, and like, you know, a lot of the time I read the act cards and agenda cards. I'm like, oh, okay, this is what's going on, blah, blah, blah. And I'm casually interested because it is a story, but this one really hooked me. I was like, wow, this is awesome. This guy's coming out. And
when I was sleeving it, everything looked amazing. And, you know, if I could ever get there, I'm sure I'd enjoy it too. But just this gatekeeper of a mechanic is just... I'm trying not to get like outwardly angry.
It's too late. No.
It's so unbelievably frustrating. Like, fine if there's a cost. Fine if Agnes isn't the best for this one. Fine if like it's harder in some way for her. But I feel like this is an unreasonable moving of the goalposts that just invalidates a big part, I would argue, of how investigators investigate. Not everyone's good at just your straight intellect investigating, and I don't understand thematically why this is different. Like why would Rite of Seeking not work in this instance? It's a matter of finding what you're looking for, right? Why would, I don't know.
Maybe because Yog-Sothoth's power is blocking your magical right.
He took all the batteries to your flashlights.
I completely understand your anger and upsetness and your salt, Sean. I think just to be...
No, don't finish that sentence. There's nothing that can finish that sentence.
Okay, period. And now, being the devil's advocate...
Damn you, grammar!
To be devil's advocate, and I'm not sure I 100% agree with this argument, so I'm just throwing it out there, not fully backing it, is that this scenario is asking you to pass investigate tests the way you're supposed to investigate naturally. And when you talk about the moving of the goalposts, I almost think it like they're not moving the goalposts, they're resetting the goalposts and cementing them in, saying, no, you have to investigate like without any special tricks or whatever. And do I think that that's a good thing? Probably not.
Well, no, not if they want us to use the cards they're designing.
But I also think, like, mystics, like you've said it many times, right? High risk, high reward. Well, it was really risky using all those cheating ways to get clues, Sean.
No, fuck that. Fuck that.
Yeah, because I guess I think of ways like, look what I found is a cheating way to get a clue. Drawn to the flame, you're cheating to get clues, right? And I don't say cheating as in actually cheating. I mean, just you're not doing...
It's non-conventional.
Right. And this one is just saying, okay, do it conventionally. And I agree. If you're not prepared for that...
And as a mechanic, that's okay. Like, if one of the locations that came out where you needed to get clues did that, totally fine. Road bump, Agnes hates it. It doesn't lock down the entire goddamn scenario.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the thing is, because it goes against how classes are structured in this game, which is like Seekers are conventionally good, but the other classes are basically given other ways to get clues, and that's kind of... I mean, that's how the game is built, because otherwise it'd just be boring if everyone could conventionally investigate, and there's no point in having classes. But then to, at some point, say, well, your class doesn't matter throughout all those things, then I guess that's the bad part of it. And again, tied to the fact that it's a campaign ender, like, people haven't talked as much about the fact that, like, Skids in Undimensioned Unseen is completely hosed by his willpower. Like, playing solo, that's just like, okay, let me go ahead and resign. But again, that's not a campaign ender, so I think that's why people don't talk about it as much versus this one.
Well, no, and I think we drew attention to it earlier. They give you the tools to deal with the bottleneck they're forcing you into. I mean, even though Skids is still pretty terribly positioned for it, at least he's got a goddamn chance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like, if this one had given you a way to boost your intellect on those locations, then maybe that would help.
Yeah, something. Or, like, I mean, imagine Undimensioned and Unseen, where maybe the broods are sitting at a 4 instead of a 6, but you don't get any of the esoteric formula boost for clues. And you're just expected to fight them with willpower honestly. It's like, fuck that! Everyone would be very upset at that, because it just locks out certain investigators who are not good at that clue. Because the whole point and the brilliance of the faction design is like, okay, you're not good at this in the conventional way, but you've got a tricky solution. Yeah. Seekers I've got a plan where when they're doing well on clues, they can deal damage. You know, Mystics have everything.
Everything willpower.
Well, yeah. But they pay for it.
That's true. So here's my question now. So specifically Agnes, because that's what you're going on here. If you knew this was coming, do you think you could properly build an Agnes that could handle this as a road bump and not a cement wall?
I don't know. Let's see, because you could. I mean, you could build an Agnes that I think has enough intellect pips in the deck and you know, maybe arcane studies, but the amount of resources you're going to have to pour into that to make it work is going to leave you really vulnerable to the combat side. Mm-hmm. And that's what I think it is. I think it's so big an ask for I guess just the way that the investigator operates, and just shutting down those cards that were kind of the solution for the weakness is, I don't know. It could be argued both ways, but no one can debate the fact that I felt fucking terrible after playing that the first time. You can't take that from me.
Yeah, I guess just my final comment is, again, I would support errata to this particular piece. I think it should be fixed.
Yeah, so basically, my Agnes campaign, which, you know, up to this point I had considered my canon campaign, which, you know, fuck me, right? So that's done. So now I'll probably try it with my Rex and Zoe campaign and see how we do. And so I, you know, maybe actually get to play it. I don't know. I'm salty by nature, so I'll go off on little things here and there that are hard.
Salty by nature.
But, you know, after 5 minutes of me grousing, I move on with my life, and I'm like, yeah, well, that was hard, and I, you know, difficulty, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But this is just like, okay, I don't know what I could have done differently, first of all. Like, when you get defeated, you want to feel like it was at least partially your own damn fault, right? Mm-hmm. At least in a game. Like, in life, I mean, life can just screw you 3 ways to Sunday, and it doesn't matter, and you don't need an explanation. But in a game, when I guess, you know, balance is a complex topic, but at least I want to feel like I had some agency in what happened. That's it. I mean, I just don't know what I could have done differently outside of just building my deck for this one scenario back at the beginning of the campaign, which, to my mind, is exactly what this game is not meant to do to you.
I'm usually not a huge fan of erratas. I think they're...
Erratum. No, wait, erratum is... No, erratum is the singular. Errata is plural.
Okay. I'm not a fan of...
Latin.
Erratums. And quite honestly, like, when I'm playing Lord of the Rings, a lot of the player cards that got errata because someone made... Someone made, like, a crazy deck that just breaks the card. They errata the card. I'm like, well, I'm not playing that deck. And I just ignore the errata of that card because I'm playing for fun, and screw you guys. I think I would support an errata on these 2 locations to make it not an action on the card to investigate, just a, you know, when you successfully investigate, you discover locations. So you still can use your flashlights, rite of seeking, stuff like that, right? Your little your workarounds to investigating for those who can't investigate well or do other things good. School, yeah.
I think Salty by Nature's first hit single is "You Down with MPE" instead of OPP.
Yes. All right. So Salt is purged. I'm gonna move on with my life now. Just did not enjoy this, and it's unfortunate because the rest of this campaign has been wonderful. It's been a great gaming experience. So I guess I'll try to focus on that and remember that everything up to this point's been great. Now, that being said, Ian's mentioned it multiple times. The big thing here is it's not the last scenario. Like in the last scenario, pretty much anything goes. Like if this is the last scenario of the campaign, I know like one way or another this shit's ending.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mind getting screwed a bit, and even screwed unfairly. Like, I think one of the most fun times I had was the first time I ran through the Night of the Zealot, and things just went absolutely south on the Devourer below, and we ended up losing 2 Gators. The other 2 had to run away screaming, and Arkham was devoured. Or taken over, or whatever the ending is.
Yeah, the first time I played that scenario was with you, Sean, at Worlds that year. And we're playing, I'm like, okay, getting clues, we're doing good. And oddly enough, Ian, it was Skids and Daisy. And I'm Daisy. And I'm like, okay, we're getting clues, doing good, okay. Oh, hey, we have enough clues to flip the agenda. Let's do that. And then I think we had only gotten 1 cultist. So 5 of them
we had a real rough midnight mass.
Yeah, 5 of them just show up, and I'm at the location where they show up, and I was just like...
As Daisy.
Yeah, as Daisy. And then I died. And I was like... Well, that's dumb. But again, last scenario. So...
Well, and even if this happened in the last scenario specifically, I still wouldn't like it because it's still a weird design bottleneck that just shuts it down with no recourse and no real workaround. But I would accept it more easily because it's like, all right, well, that was the wall I hit, and now the scenario's done, or now the campaign's done. And that's the way it goes. But yeah, I don't know. The second to last scenario is not, in my opinion, the place to do something like this.
I mean, I'm not salty. I kind of liked it. I thought it was interesting. I do like on the second agenda card, the text on the front is like what the cultists are saying, and it's written in this weird font. And so there's all these little lines and dashes and stuff over the writing where...
I did see that when I was sleeving it.
Yeah,
I love
where
that touch.
Stuff shouldn't be. And then I saw on the Facebook group... there's a couple people who asked, I think some person on our Discord said, I think there's a printing error on my agenda too. Can I contact FFG about it? Because it's really hard to read the text. And
Oh, you poor summer child.
Yeah, sweet summer child. I found that funny, and I totally get how some people, like, especially casually playing people, maybe who haven't played a lot of Arkham Files games, would be like, oh, weird, this is really hard to read. I wonder, what are all these extra lines? What a weird printing error. I thought that was hilarious, but...
Yeah, I could just imagine like the week after this game came out, then FFG's customer service inbox is just flooded with all these like, I have a printing error, help. They're just like, no man.
Yeah, they had an email response template already lined up, I'm sure.
Written in the same font that the card was.
We regret that you don't understand the theme of the game you're playing.
I guess really as my final comment on this, I know kind of a common thing to say in these circumstances is like, this is an Arkham game, you're going to get slammed. The thing is, my problem with that is that fundamentally these are games, like, so they should have some level of like a chance of giving you a chance no matter what investigator you're playing. Otherwise I could just like punch myself in the balls for like an hour, and that would be my Arkham experience. But I think the issue is I don't mind hard. Like, I've played LOTR LCG for 5 years, so I don't mind hard at all. But it's just a question of giving players the tools to do what they need to do. That's what it really comes down to. Difficulty is fine, but you gotta let people play the game.
Yeah. Well, I've said all I need to say. I'll probably just end up repeating myself even more if I go on. So, that being said, still love the game. everything else about this game, but that one singular stupid ass mechanic is brilliant and awesome. So let's bear that in mind, and maybe I'll have a better experience when I'm not playing solo. One of the 3 investigators who just gets fucked by it.
Yeah. Like I said, it's a fantastic scenario if that's not an issue for you.
Wonderful. Then I'm glad they put this gate up on the front of it. It's a gated scenario.
Just play solo Rex. You're good.
My solo Daisy higher ed spell build, I think, is probably pretty well positioned to at least do something in that scenario. So we'll see how it goes. Okay, guys, so let's put a bow on this one.
That's a long one.
Yeah, that rant really did take up a little bit more time than I was expecting it would.
Salt takes time.
Yes, so salt is purged. Watch where you step. Probably wash it off your skin. It can get a little bit irritating if there's a little bit too much on there.
Totally on
so
topic,
guys,
though. Sorry, before we finish. I found out an interesting fact, speaking of salt and Dunwich. Did you know that the suffix witch used in Europe, like Greenwich or there's probably a Dunwich or whatever, and it's like Dunwich or Greenwich or whatever.
They have cute ways of pronouncing things.
Yeah, that is a place where they mine salt. That's where that town is there because it had a salt mine, and until very recently salt was super hard to get, and so the witch part of that is salt mine. So there you go.
Well,
it's completely justified.
I think at the very least we found the theme for our episode title.
Probably.
Ian, any closing thoughts from you?
No, they're just emphasizing, as for the other scenarios, we talked about how great they are, and overall the campaign is great and the game is great. It's just one particular little gripe, which happens in LCGs like this, even with all the consideration in the world and the best designers, which, not just saying this, but Matt Newman is a fantastic designer. Probably up there with one of my favorite designers.
Oh, yeah,
all the things
for
he
sure.
does
He's
is
in my
really
top
good.
3. I don't want to disparage him as a designer as a whole. I hate this one.
It is just something that happens if you look at any LCG stuff happens that wasn't thought of or intended or falls through the cracks, or it was intended but after the fact it's like, oh, wait a minute, that's not kind of what I was going for. So it's just something that happens, and we're just bringing it up to highlight kind of something that should be talked about.
I just brought a big highlighter. All right, guys. Well, thanks for joining us on this one. Please, 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 we'd love to play your call on the podcast. Call us with comments, or I guess, what was the other thing? Oh, yeah, if you just want to rage at us, I suppose. At the Mythos Busters hotline, that's 203-493-MYTH, 203-493-6984. You can also email us at mythosbusterspod@gmail.com, tweet at us at mythosbusters. Visit our blog, which is a little stale of late. So if you feel like writing an article, if you want to refute the design on Where Doom Awaits and just tear my arguments apart, please, please do. You can write that for our blog at mythosbusterspodcast.wordpress.com. Follow us on Facebook. Join our Discord, where you can get those wonderful notifications of 420 plus messages in the encounter spoilers when Sean goes on a rant. And lastly, of course, check out our Miskatonic AV Club. You can our card review series. You can find that on our YouTube channel at Mythosbusters on YouTube, or you can subscribe to the audio-only RSS feed at just search the Miskatonic AV Club. Boy, we have a lot of things nowadays.
We do.
That rundown never used to take me that long.
I also put the if you go to our Facebook page, there's a call button. And that links to our Mythosbusters hotline. So if you're on mobile and you go to our Facebook page,
that's
you
genius.
can hit call the Mythosbusters and it goes to our hotline.
And you don't have to worry about getting a random pickup from one of us. It always just goes straight to voicemail. So don't feel like you're disturbing us.
We screen all our calls.
Like that. Yes.
Yeah, you don't have to talk to a human. It's fine.
Who wants to do that? Oh, yeah. And also, of course, check out Scott's ass. Being in our Discord and following our Twitch feed is the best way to do that. So on some random weekday when Scott's doing his shift work and has free hours, he'll do his Arkham Solo series on Twitch and hopefully make it over to YouTube at some point. The first ones didn't because Scott hated them. But
Oh god, so many mistakes. I'm bad at twitching. I'll get better.
It's remarkable how much more brain space twitching takes rather than just regular playing. It's not easy.
Like showing
It's
the
not
players
easy
the
to
screen. That
Right, that is a big piece of it.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for joining us for episode 18 of Mythos Busters, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.